There are new concerns about the safety of firefighters battling wildfires during the pandemic. Many Western states are experiencing massive and historic wildfires. The hardest hit areas right now are in California, Washington, and Oregon, where dozens of fires are burning across the three states. New research shows smoke from those fires can heighten the risk of crews catching COVID-19. But the concerns don't end with the smoke. To talk more about that and what's being done to protect the firefighters, we're joined now by Luke Montrose. He's an assistant professor with the Department of Community and Environmental Health at Boise State University. Professor Montrose, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Tell us more about what this research found and how is this smoke affecting the lungs and immune systems of the men and women fighting these fires?
Yeah, happy to be with you. What we've found from the current literature is that the wildfire smoke that these firefighters are exposed to repeatedly has the ability to suppress the immune system. And we've been able to look at previous instances of viral infections that occur commonly in firefighters, something known as Camp Crud, that happens every year in firefighter camps, and it seems to ramp up at the end of fire season. That Camp Crud gives us an indication that these firefighters and even the general public may be susceptible to coronavirus following repeated exposure to smoke exposure.
And so, what have we learned then from previous infections in firefighters, both during and after previous wildfire seasons?
Yeah, so actually, I would turn to some literature that just came out earlier this month from Dr. Landguth at the University of Montana. She looked at 10 years of data from Montana and was able to show that following a wildfire season, months later, after the worst wildfire seasons, there was actually more flu occurrences that happened. So obviously the flu is different than coronavirus, but we can start to infer what might happen, and we can start to take action now to try to prevent this ramp up of coronavirus following this really bad wildfire season.
So, Professor, of course, smoke isn't the only concern. What else is posing a problem for firefighters in terms of spreading infections?
Yeah, so if we think about wildland firefighter camps, this can be tens, hundreds, sometimes depending on the fire, thousands of personnel packed into one location. And so there's lots of things to think about with that. Thinking about smoke and its impact on coronavirus and just impact on lungs in general, the placement of these firefighter camps is important. So trying to move them into a safe location where the firefighters can have a reprieve from the smoke. In addition, these are not places that are typically conducive to the types of mitigation factors that we ask the public to do during coronavirus: wash your hands and social distance. This is not something that's typically done in a firefighter camp. So thankfully, groups like the National Interagency Fire Center put out guidance early on to try to help firefighter managers and those who are in charge of setting up these camps to try to put their best foot forward and do what they could to implement some of these mitigation measures. And I'd say one step they took even further than that, thinking about the camps and then thinking about how firefighters operate as a group. One of the things that they did was to implement the idea of firefighter pods. It's the idea that firefighters would work in small groups where they would work in small groups, travel in small groups, and then bunk and eat in small groups. And that way, if one of these firefighters were to get sick and a positive case was acknowledged, that entire pod could be contained and they wouldn't transfer it to the rest of the firefighter groups. So I think that these are all really good mitigation factors to have been implemented.
That's a great idea, and I'm so glad that folks like you are tackling how to keep these firefighters safe as they're doing such difficult work. Well, Professor Luke Montrose, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.